Namaskar, this is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Tonight, we're coming to you from Helsinki, the capital of Finland, a country that sits right on NATO's frontier with Russia. Finland shares the longest NATO border with Russia, which is more than 1,300 kilometers. And that gives it a ringside view of the war in Ukraine and a powerful voice in shaping Europe's response. Today, we sat down with Finland's President, Alexander Stubb, to talk about how this war could end and what role India might play in that process. President Stubb called India the next superpower. He said New Delhi could help bridge the diplomatic divide, and he defended India's decision to keep buying Russian oil. He said he cannot blame India for its purchases. He also spoke about Europe's choices. Did the West underestimate Russia's intentions? Has Europe done enough to stop the war from spreading? And is Finland now a NATO member facing any direct threat from Russia? And two very special reports from Finland too. On its long relationship with Moscow, and why the city of Helsinki is called the design capital of the world. Also on the show, is Russia moving Wagner mercenaries to Venezuela? India is set to triple incentives for rare earth magnet manufacturing. Trump is threatening to attack Nigeria for, and I quote, the killing of Christians. Indonesia's China-backed high-speed rail project struggles under mounting debt. What is this new comet that the internet says will hit the earth? And a historic win for India's women's cricket team. They have won the maiden World Cup trophy. All this and more coming up, but first the headlines.
A strong earthquake kills at least 20 people and injures more than 500 in northern Afghanistan just months after another deadly tremor had left the country reeling. The 6.3 magnitude quake struck overnight. It is the latest natural disaster for the Taliban government, which has faced 3 major deadly earthquakes since taking over Afghanistan in 2021. Thailand and Cambodia begin withdrawing heavy weapons and conducting demining operations along their contested border. This is part of steps to de-escalate tensions following last week's signing of an extended truce. Border tensions between the two countries exploded into a deadly 5-day conflict in July, which killed at least 48 people and temporarily displaced hundreds of thousands. Tanzania's president sworn in amid an internet blackout as the opposition says hundreds have been killed in the protests after last Wednesday's vote. The Electoral Commission says the president won 98% of the vote, but the main opposition party, which was barred from running, has rejected the results and called for fresh elections. Former Bangladeshi Prime Minister Khalida Zia will contest elections expected in February next year. The 80-year-old has been a dominant political figure for decades. Her Bangladesh Nationalist Party is seen as the frontrunner in the elections. Zia has been in poor health following years of imprisonment under her arch-rival Sheikh Hasina, who was overthrown in a mass uprising in August last year. And Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth traveled to the border between North and South Korea. It's the first time in 8 years that a US Defense Secretary has made such a visit. This follows Donald Trump's repeated overtures to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un during his Asia tour last week, which went unanswered by Pyongyang.
Back in August, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was on a phone call. The focus was the war in Ukraine and the need for peace. Also the role that India could play in ending the conflict. On the other side of the call was Finland's President Alexander Stubb. President Stubb made a statement after his conversation. Back then he had said that India plays an important role. It's respected in the South, the West and the East. That was in August. Today in Helsinki, President Stubb went a step further. In an exclusive interview with Firstpost, he called India the next superpower. He said New Delhi could help bridge the divide between the East and the West. He also defended India's decision to keep buying Russian oil. We spoke about Europe's view of the war, about how the conflict might end, and whether Finland, now a NATO member, faces a direct threat from Moscow. Here's an excerpt from that exclusive conversation. Mr. President, thank you for speaking with us.
Thanks for inviting me.
Are you confident that if your country were to come under attack, the US under President Trump will defend you militarily?
Definitely. I mean, from all the signs that I've heard from the Trump administration, including the president himself, there's a very strong commitment to the alliance. It's been there, actually, since its foundation over 75 years ago. And Finland, of course, has one of the largest militaries in Europe, together with Turkey, Ukraine, and Poland. And that means that we're also taking care of the backyard of the United States up here in the Arctic. And defense cooperation between Finland and the United States, not only inside the alliance, but bilaterally, is closer than ever before. So I don't have any doubts about the American commitment to Article 5 in the alliance.
Interesting you say that, because the US President's words do not always reflect that. And are you worried that your country might come under attack? A lot of European leaders have said that President Putin will not stop at Ukraine.
No, we're not worried. There's no imminent military threat coming from Russia to us for many different reasons. One of them is the size of our military. The second one is that we're part of the alliance. And the third one is that we have a very close partnership with the United States. And as far as American commitment to NATO is concerned, remember that a year and a half ago we were struggling of having defense expenditure at 2% of GDP. Because of Trump and because of the external threat coming from Russia, we're now moving up to 5%. So that shows, I think, close commitment. Finland is a security provider, not a security consumer. We have a long relationship with Russia. Russia knows that we didn't join NATO because we want to be against someone. We joined NATO because we wanted to protect ourselves.
Do you think that this decision was rushed? That it should have been debated?
No, not at all. I think it should have happened 30 years ago. I was in a distinct minority who said that we should have joined 1995 at the same time when we joined the European Union.
Mr. President, according to you, what will it take to end the war in Ukraine?
The main thing is to increase the pressure on Putin and on Russia, because the only thing that Putin and Russia understands is power. And then there are two things that we should do. One is financial pressure. That's why I welcome the decision of the United States to put on direct sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil, which are basically financing, two oil companies which are financing the war. I also welcome the idea that Europe should use the frozen assets that have been confiscated, roughly 140 billion euros, to help Ukraine. So that's one side of it. And the second one is to continue to give military aid to Ukraine in the form of missiles, in the form of ammunition, in the form of intelligence.
Do you see a role for India, given its relationship with both Ukraine and Russia?
Definitely. And here's where we come. You know, you might know that I'm a great admirer of India, and I think India will be our next superpower, you know, right up there with the United States and with China. And of course, in taking that security political role, whether it's Prime Minister Modi or whether it's Foreign Minister Jai Shankar, it's a strategic thinking. What India is obviously doing right now is having a multi-vectoral foreign policy, which is fully understandable. So you have to keep good relations with Russia. You want to have good relations with the United States and, of course, with the European Union and China as well.
Do you agree with President Trump's approach in dealing with this, and how do you see his engagements with President Putin?
President Trump, in my mind, has two gears in his negotiation tactique. One is carrot and the other one is stick. And there's kind of nothing in between. And that's what makes him actually sometimes a very efficient negotiator. And he's sincerely trying to get peace. He's working very hard on this as he is in the Middle East. And in this particular case, I think President Trump has tried carrot a few times. He tried it in Alaska. He tried it in a phone conversation with President Putin a couple of weeks ago. And he felt that President Putin had promised him something. But then, as always with Putin, President Trump was deceived. And he felt very frustrated. There's a reason why he wanted to work on security guarantees for Ukraine together with us Europeans. There's a reason why he wants a ceasefire at the line of contact, because he felt that Putin promised him that. But when that wasn't the case, he went for the stick. And the stick, at this stage, has been sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil, and actually, as you have been very much involved as well, secondary sanctions on countries that buy oil from Russia, and actually also tough words on European countries that do that, especially Hungary and Slovakia. So, you know, he's a tough negotiator, and myself, and many of our European friends and allies, we try to work in the back office to find results.
The two leaders, Presidents Putin and Trump, were supposed to meet in Budapest. That meeting could not happen. Would you be open to hosting them? There's a very good...
No, absolutely not. You know, it's not our position, but it needs to be sort of in neutral territory, if you will. And I think, personally, that the best place for that meeting would be the G20 meeting in 3 weeks in Johannesburg, because that's when you have, hopefully, a lot of big leaders like Prime Minister Modi, President Ramaphosa, President Lula there. So that's where we could have, if not a Trump-Putin meeting, but at least a Zelensky-Putin meeting. But in order for that to take place, the latter one, we need to have a ceasefire in place first.
Do you see failures for Europe as well? 4 years and thousands of sanctions and a lot of military support and calibrated support for Ukraine, and you've not been able to push the Russians back. They still control, 18% of Ukrainian territory. And then you have an ally in Donald Trump who is wishy-washy about where things are going.
If you look at the big picture, I don't see failures. If you look at the smaller picture, you can see mistakes. In other words, we should have probably been even faster with the sanctions. We should have gone for bigger sanctions in the beginning. We should have committed more to military aid. But remember that Europe has now provided 140 billion euros of military and other aid to Ukraine. We have used a lot of our stocks to help Ukraine fight this war. We have made many different commitments and engagements and 19 sanction packages. So, of course, you know, you can always say that there should be more and faster, so that's the mistake. But as a failure, no, I think we've been able to help Ukraine to sustain this war.
There's a lot of pressure on India to stop buying Russian oil, and the US President has in fact imposed 25% punitive tariffs on India for doing that, when the fact is that China is the biggest buyer of Russian oil and Europe has been buying Russian energy. Would you say that it's unfair to single India out?
I won't take issue with that, because this is a decision that India does all by itself. It's a big player, it's an independent actor, and it decides what's best for its foreign policy. What I will say is that the things that used to bring us together are now used to tear us apart. So interdependence, trade, or energy was supposed to be things that brought us together, but now they can actually be weaponized.
So you agree that it's unfair to target India?
I think India is not the only one to blame here.
The tariffs on China have in fact been reduced by 10% in the last week.
Again, I come from a small country which believes in free trade, which believes in international institutions and norms. I am not a big fan of tariffs in any form. I'm a big fan of free trade.
So you agree that India or any other country is free to buy oil or energy from any other country, including Russia, as long as there are no United Nations sanctions?
Again, I'm not going to give advice to India on this. What I can say is that I hope that the European Union and India can finalize its free trade agreement sooner rather than later. India is a big player in all of this, and what India does matters.
President Stubb, thank you for your time and for your perspective.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Helsinki is a city caught between the past and the present. Look around and you see a strange duality. There are Russian statues across the city while Finnish flags now flutter under NATO. This contrast tells the story of Finland and Russia. For more than 200 years, these two neighbors have been bound by history, war, and an uneasy peace. Finland was once the Grand Duchy under the Russian Tsars. Then it was a stubborn David fighting the Soviet Goliath. And then for decades, a neutral buffer between the East and the West. But in 2022, the story changed again. Russia invaded Ukraine and Finland's era of neutrality ended overnight. In this special report, we trace the history Finland shares with Russia and what it means today. It's a damp Sunday in Helsinki. A tiny crowd has gathered at Senate Square. This is the heart of the Finnish capital, a gleaming white cathedral atop a hill, and a towering statue in front of it. This square is a relic from a different era, of a time when Finland was part of the Russian Empire. And the statue? It's not a Finnish king or prime minister. It's Tsar Alexander, the second emperor of Russia. Many Finns consider Tsar Alexander to be a liberal ruler. It was under him that they received their first taste of reforms and autonomy. But you can't deny the irony of the scene behind me. A Russian Tsar standing tall in the middle of Helsinki, looking over dozens of Finns. They don't seem to have a problem with Alexander, but I doubt they have a similar warmth for the current ruler of Russia. In the 1800s, Finland was a Grand Duchy of Russia, sort of like a protectorate or client state. It was during this time that Helsinki became Finland's capital. As you walk around, the Russian influence is unmistakable. The symmetry, the scale, the slopes, all of it reminds you of Russia's imperial capital, St. Petersburg. Russian rule also triggered a renaissance of faith, especially Orthodox Christianity. The Tsar's soldiers and Russian migrants needed places to worship. Thus, in the 1800s, a number of Orthodox churches popped up. The Uspensky Cathedral is a relic of that time. You look at the red bricks, the golden crosses, the onion domes, and the Russian influence is apparent. This cathedral was built on the orders of Tsar Alexander II. It was built by a Russian church architect for the Orthodox parish of Helsinki way back in 1868. Even today, it is the largest Orthodox cathedral in Northern and Western Europe, a relic of Russia's spiritual and strategic influence over Finland. Russian rule was not all that bad. Many Finns consider it to be a period of prosperity. No war, no crises, and growing wealth. But beneath the surface, trouble was brewing. In the 20th century, a communist revolution swept through Russia. The Tsar and his family were killed. Seizing on this opportunity, the Finns declared independence. In the winter of 1917, Russia's new leader, Vladimir Lenin, recognized Finnish statehood. But Lenin's successor had other plans. Joseph Stalin lived in paranoia about Nazi Germany. He felt his western flank was vulnerable. He wanted more land to protect St. Petersburg from Hitler's army. And for that, he turned to Finland. Stalin asked Helsinki to cede land to the southeast. When they refused, war broke out.
He matched the Soviet army of 15 millions against Finland's 30,000.
The tiny Finnish army landed heavy blows on the Soviets.
Finland's example has given fresh inspiration to the little nations of the world.
But eventually, Moscow's might prevailed. After 3 months of fighting, both sides signed a peace treaty. Finland ceded 9% of its land to Russia. That war shook up the Finns. Helsinki decided it was time to pursue neutrality, to build bridges to the east and west. This decision characterized almost 75 years of Finnish policy. They walked on eggshells to not antagonize Russia. But a few years ago, everything changed. Until 2022, this station connected Finland to its old imperial capital, St. Petersburg. You could board a train here, travel east, and reach St. Petersburg in 3.5 hours. But now that railway line to the east lies unused. A service that was used by 500,000 people every year was cut after Russia invaded Ukraine. A literal break in ties and bonds that go back more than 2 centuries. Russia was once Finland's master. Now a Ukrainian flag flutters over Helsinki. Within months of the invasion, Finland applied to join NATO. In 2023, they officially entered the alliance, thus ending more than 7 decades of military neutrality. Today, Finland is NATO's listening post. A 2-hour drive from Helsinki will take you to the alliance's front line. 1,340 kilometers of tension, military drills, and animosity.
VIT on a vehicle! Hey!
It tells you how dramatic Finland's journey has been. A Grand Duchy of Russia, a victim of Russian aggression, a proud flag bearer of neutrality, and now a frontline NATO state against Russia. Finland's story sums up an old political truth. Nothing is permanent in this world, not rivalries, not alliances, and not friendships. And while we are here, there's another thing about Helsinki that you must know. Nothing in this city feels accidental. You walk around and you get this sense that someone has put a lot of thought into how the city is built. Yesterday, the weather was not playing nice. It was cold and drizzling, many would say classic Finland. But instead of running home, guess where people were headed? To a library. It may sound bizarre, but this place, this library, has become Helsinki's living room. And through it, Finland shows us what cities can be when they're built for the people. Take a look. The Finnish love being out and about. But today the weather is not playing along. A slight drizzle has pushed most people inside. Not to worry though. This swanky building has everyone covered. Its curved lines and imposing facade immediately make you curious. And inside, it gets weirder. The ground floor is a chess colosseum. You see thinking faces peer intently over the board. 2 levels above is a library. When you think library, you think dusty books, spiraling staircases, and barely alive librarians. Well, this is not one of those. The Udi Central Library in Finland sums up the Finnish attitude to buildings and public spaces. Form follows function. Design is not about luxury, it's about democracy. Here you can read a book, you can rent a workspace, you can organize a family event, you can book a gaming day, you can host a DIY workshop. So this building spanning 3 floors is not just a library, it's a thriving community center. The Udi Library opened to the public in 2018. It's been free ever since. And the vibe inside is quite different. Like any library, you see people poring over books, you see people with their laptops hard at work, and you also see people just lounging about, not reading or working, just chilling. Udi's website sums it up best. The library is a place where all people are equal. Everyone is welcome to spend time here. This is not a slogan on paper. It's an ideology that drives Helsinki. The thought process dates back to the 20th century, and independent Finland was charting out its future. It was time to build or rebuild the cities. In Helsinki, that job fell to Alvar Aalto. He designed many of the iconic buildings in Helsinki. At the center of his design were humans. How can the structure serve the citizens? Can it make their lives easier? It's an approach that persists even today. Cities can either expand in a planned manner or they can sprawl. Helsinki is the former. This is a city designed to serve people, not cars. As you walk around, you see these trams crisscrossing the city. There are more than 170 kilometers of tram lines with more than 300 stops. If there isn't a tram line, there are these bikes at most busy junctions. There are more than 4,000 such city bikes at more than 400 stations. All you have to do is buy a pass, unlock a bike, and ride away. These 2 ideas dominate Helsinki's design. Udi's focus on the community and Aalto's focus on functionalism. What you see is not accidental. It is deliberate planning. Helsinki is one of the few cities in the world with a CDO, a Chief Design Officer. This officer is supported by Helsinki Lab, a team of designers who advise the city government. They do not look at construction as a problem. They look at it as a solution to congestion, to climate change, and to public transport. In 2012, Helsinki went one step ahead. It was designated as a World Design Capital, a tag that recognizes the city's planned expansion. Helsinki used that designation as a launchpad. They completed 580 projects that year. Some 290 Finnish and global organizations were roped in, and the legacy of that push can be seen here. Every lane, every tram line, every public square is designed with the user in mind. You can get to places faster on foot than in cars. It's a lesson for urban planners across the world. Designing is not just about beauty, It's about functionality. Our next story is about a plane, a Russian I-176 transport plane. It is a type of military transport aircraft. On Sunday, it landed in Caracas, the capital of Venezuela. And it was not an easy journey. The plane took 2 days to reach Venezuela from Russia, 2 whole days, and the path it took was also a long detour. Look at the countries it flew over: Armenia, Algeria, Morocco, Senegal, Mauritania, and then to Latin America. Do you notice something? No Western country is on the list. The plane did not cross any Western airspace. Now you may wonder why this is so special. Why are we suddenly talking about this random plane and its route? Well, here are some facts. This sort of an aircraft is usually used to move equipment or personnel. It is linked to the Russian military and also the Wagner Group. That's the Russian mercenary group Wagner. It is operated by Aviacon Zito Trans. It has been sanctioned for transporting military cargo to conflict zones. Now, this sort of a plane can transport 200 people or up to 50 tons of cargo. And it has done so in the past. Moscow has used it to deliver arms and mercenaries to various countries. So what was this plane doing in Venezuela? Was it moving Wagner mercenaries to this country? As you may know, Russia's presence in Venezuela is not new. It has been built over years. There are multi-billion-dollar sales in arms, joint ventures in oil and mining, and intelligence cooperation. In May this year, the two sides, Russia and Venezuela, signed a strategic partnership treaty. It elevates ties to a new level. The treaty covers energy, mining, trade, and investment. And then there's Wagner, or its latest reincarnation, the Russian Africa Corps. That's what they call it now. Reports say this group is present in Venezuela. The question is, what are they doing there? They're there as Russian private military contractors supporting Venezuelan forces. Some Wagner advisors are helping with protests. Some reports even say that Russian operatives form a part of President Maduro's security ring, his inner security ring. And look at the timing of all of this. Russian operatives in Venezuela at a time when tensions with the US are rising. Washington has been targeting Caracas. In the last 2 months, US strikes have killed at least 60 people, 60. The US says it was going after drug smuggling boats and that these vessels were carrying drugs. But Caracas says this is not counter-narcotics. This is war. And the objective is regime change in Venezuela. Meanwhile, the US military buildup continues. Warships, bombers, fighter jets, drones, marines. The US's Gerald R. Ford, the world's largest aircraft carrier, now sits in the Caribbean. Reports say new targets inside Venezuela have also been mapped, including ports, airstrips, and naval bases linked to drug routes. Now, it's no secret that Washington wants President Nicolas Maduro gone. American officials call Venezuela, and I'm quoting, a narco state, acting as a cocaine transit hub. President Donald Trump was asked about it in a recent interview. He says he does not want war with Venezuela, but Nicolas Maduro's days are numbered.
I wouldn't be inclined to say that I would do that. I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do with Venezuela, if I was going to do it or if I wasn't going to do it. I doubt it. I don't think so. But they've been treating us very badly.
Now, Moscow's presence raises more questions, especially with this mysterious flight. It suggests that Russia is not sitting idle as tensions rise. Moscow may be signaling support for Caracas or preparing to safeguard its interests if things escalate further. Is this about military advisors? Is it about logistics, intelligence? We don't know yet. But one thing is quite clear. Latin America was once considered Washington's backyard. It is now becoming a stage for another great power competition, and a Russian aircraft holds the clue. Now let's talk about rare earths, the metals that power the modern world, the hidden ingredients in our phones, computers, and missiles. Today, rare earths are the new front line of global competition. Every major economy is racing to secure them and build their own strategic stockpiles. And India is making its biggest move yet in this direction. New Delhi is preparing to make an announcement. It is planning a major expansion of its rare earth policy. The plan is to triple its spending on rare earth magnets. Today, the budget for this is $290 million. India wants to increase this budget to $788 million. So from 290 to 788 million, it's a threefold jump. That's how much India is willing to spend to stock up on rare earth magnets. And what are they? What are these magnets? Think of them as the tiny powerhouses behind modern technology. These magnets are incredibly strong, stronger than the regular magnets that you place on your fridge. Rare earth magnets do not hold things together, they make them move. These magnets turn electricity into motion and motion back into electricity. That is why they're used in motors and generators. In an electric car, they help the wheels spin. In a wind turbine, they help capture energy from the wind. In your phone, they power the tiny vibration motor and speakers. And that is why these rare earth magnets are so critical. Today, this sector is dominated by China, but India wants to build its own supply. The aim of this plan is threefold. 1 is building domestic capacity, 2, reducing dependence on Chinese imports, and 3, securing a place in the global race for strategic minerals. The plan is waiting for a cabinet approval. The new funding will support about 5 companies. It will offer a mix of production-linked incentives or PLIs and capital subsidies. Let's break that down for you. What are PLIs and capital subsidies? PLIs are quite simple. The government pays companies for making more. The more they produce, the more they earn in incentives. It is a reward for manufacturing locally instead of importing. Think of it as a performance bonus, but for factories. So when they make more in India, they get paid in cash for every piece of product they produce. It helps attract investors and it builds local industry faster. That takes care of PLIs. What about capital subsidies? This is support for setting up the factory itself. The government pays a part of the upfront cost, like land, machinery, or equipment. It lowers the risk for companies trying to start production. So in short, capital subsidies help you begin and production-linked incentives help you grow. Together, these are the tools that India is using to boost manufacturing of rare earths. Again, the goal is quite simple. Build rare earth capacity at home, reduce dependence on imports, and secure the metals that power modern life. Right now, China controls almost 90% of global rare earth processing. Beijing built this dominance over decades. It gives them enormous power. Power that China has not been shy of wielding. When Donald Trump slapped tariffs, China responded by throttling rare earth exports. Not just for the United States, but for all major economies across the world. And this move hit car makers and defense suppliers worldwide. Supply chains froze overnight. The world saw how vulnerable it had become. And that is what India wants to tackle. Earlier this year, Prime Minister Modi had issued a warning. He said, and I quote, "Critical minerals must never be weaponized." He called for stable and diversified supply chains. India's latest plan follows that call. India wants to be prepared for another supply shock. If China restricts exports again, India wants to be ready. Of course, it won't be easy. Domestic mining is still a costly affair. The technology is complex, it is hard to crack, and the process carries environmental risks. Rare earth deposits often contain radioactive material, which makes extraction expensive and risky. So subsidies will be needed. This is to make any production plan viable. So far, India's state-owned companies have taken the lead here. They have secured mining partnerships overseas. Building expertise will also take time. But these steps are all necessary. Just look at what happened last week. Donald Trump met Xi Jinping in South Korea, and rare earths were high on the agenda. China has been cutting back on exports, so the US stepped in to strike a deal. Both sides agreed to a 1-year pause. China will ease its export curbs, and in return, the United States will lower some tariffs. Trump was quick to declare that the rare earth crisis is over.
But all of the rare earth has been settled.
But within days, the US and China are back at it again. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has made a statement. He says China has cornered the market and has not always kept its promises. And with this, he also issued a warning, Scott Bessent. He said if China backtracks, the US could raise the tariffs again. Let me quote from what he said. "We don't want to decouple, but we must de-risk." That is how Scott Bessent framed America's problem. And that's exactly what India is trying to address. It is de-risking for the future. reducing exposure to China and building its own foundation for critical minerals. Like I said, getting there will take time, but this new spending plan shows intent that India is ready to invest to reach that goal. Donald Trump loves a fight. If it's not China, it's Canada. If it's not the media, it's someone else. And now he's picked a new target, which is Nigeria. It's a country in West Africa, home to more than 220 million people, divided between Muslims and Christians. President Trump says Christians are being killed in Nigeria in large numbers, and he's accused Nigeria's government of failing to stop the quote-unquote Islamic terrorists. And he's warned that the US could strike if the killings continue. The US could strike Nigeria if the killings continue. Nigeria, on the other hand, has dismissed the charges. Abuja says there is no Christian persecution. It says Donald Trump is twisting a complex reality. The violence in Nigeria is real, but it is rooted in poverty, power, and land, not religion, or so Nigeria claims. Still, Trump's words have sparked a diplomatic storm. It has left many asking, is he planning to start another war, this time in Africa?
Donald Trump has found a new target. This time, it's Nigeria. The U.S. president says Christians are being killed there in large numbers in the country. He accuses Nigeria's government of failing to stop the Islamic terrorists. He warns the United States could strike if the killings continue. He also threatened to cut off American aid and said Washington was ready to go in guns a-blazing.
Could be. I mean, a lot of things I envisage, a lot of things. They're killing record numbers of Christians in Nigeria. And they have other countries very bad also. You know that. That part of the world, very bad. They're killing the Christians and killing them in very large numbers. We're not going to allow that to happen.
His comments came after Washington put Nigeria back on countries of particular concern list. It is a watch list for nations accused of violating religious freedom. Other countries on it include China, Russia, Pakistan, and North Korea. Trump's war secretary said Washington was preparing for action. But in Nigeria, the response to Trump's threat has been cautious. Its president, Bola Tinubu, says the claim of Christian persecution does not reflect reality. He says religious freedom and tolerance are central to Nigeria's national identity. Officials say Trump's words are being viewed as political, not literal.
President Donald Trump has a way of, or a unique style of forcing a sit-down by probably tweeting something that is pungent and forceful. We don't take it literally because we know Donald Trump thinks well of Nigeria.
Nigeria is Africa's most populous country. It has more than 220 million people and about 200 ethnic groups. The north is mostly Muslim. The south is mostly Christian. For 15 years, Islamist groups like Boko Haram and Islamic State West Africa have attacked communities. Their violence has killed tens of thousands and displaced millions. Most attacks happen in the northeast, which is largely Muslim. Elsewhere, conflict takes other forms. None of these fit neatly into religion. They cut across tribes, regions, and communities. Experts say people are fighting over survival, not faith. That's why Trump's remarks have struck a nerve. Some people see U.S. help as a chance to improve security. Others see something else, a foreign power oversimplifying their problems. Editorials in local papers call his words reckless. But why is Trump targeting Nigeria? His evangelical supporters in the United States have long urged him to act on what they call Christian persecution overseas. It also projects strength ahead of the 2026 midterm elections and shifts attention from domestic controversies. It also sends a warning to countries seen as leaning towards China in Africa. Besides, This is also part of a broader pattern to target African countries. Earlier this year, Trump made a similar claim about South Africa. He said white farmers were victims of genocide, a charge dismissed by the South African government. Now, Nigeria is the new focus. Washington insists it's prepared to act. Abuja says there's no reason to. And with tensions rising, one question looms large. Is this about protecting Christians or another display of American overreach?
Our next story is from Indonesia. It is Southeast Asia's biggest economy, but it is now facing a high-speed headache. A railway that was meant to showcase modern Indonesia has become a lesson in debt, delays, and diplomacy. It's called Whoosh, Indonesia's first high-speed railway, built with Chinese money, powered by Chinese technology, and driven by Indonesian ambition. When it opened in 2023, it made headlines. It was the first bullet train in Southeast Asia. It connected capital Jakarta and the country's third populous city, Bandung. The journey that once took 4 hours was now cut to just 45 minutes. It was seen as a symbol of modern Indonesia and a showcase of China's Belt and Road Initiative. But 2 years later, that symbol is losing its gloss. The train is running, but it is running at a loss. Passenger numbers are low, operating costs are high, and the debt is piling up. The project cost about $7.3 billion. 3/4 of that came from Chinese loans. The rest came from Indonesian state companies. Last year, the project reported a loss of $253 million. And that's just the start. This year, too, the losses have continued. So what was meant to be a symbol of success is now a source of stress. The numbers do not add up, and the clock is ticking on these Chinese loans. So now Indonesia is sitting down with China. They have begun talks to restructure the debt. The aim? To ease repayment pressure and avoid default. Indonesia says that the talks will be comprehensive, but the government has made it clear that the state budget will not cover these losses. The question then is, who will? Enter Danantara. It is Indonesia's new sovereign wealth fund. It manages dividends and profits from about 1,000 state-owned companies. And it has now been asked to handle this project too. The fund says talks with China are underway and a deal could be reached later this year. And how is Beijing reacting to all of this? Well, it is defending the project. Take a look at this.
It has been 2 years since the Jakarta-Bandung high-speed railway officially went into operation. Over the past 2 years, the railway has maintained safe, unimpeded, and orderly operation. Governments of the two countries attach great importance to the development of the project. China stands ready to work with Indonesia to continue facilitating the high-quality operation of the Jakarta-Bandung high-speed railway.
So Beijing says Whoosh is a success story. It creates jobs, it boosts connectivity, and it drives local growth. But the numbers, they tell a different story. The Indonesian consortium owns 60% of the project. Chinese companies own the rest. Both sides are struggling to cover their costs. But this is not just Indonesia's story. Around the world, many countries that borrowed from China are feeling the heat. These loans were part of Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative. It's a massive state-backed infrastructure program that promised development and progress. But for many, that promise has turned into pressure. Let me give you some examples. In Africa, Zambia defaulted and had to renegotiate its loans. Ghana and Ethiopia are also asking for relief. In Asia, Laos is struggling to repay China for its own high-speed railway. Pakistan owes billions under the controversial China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC. And Sri Lanka had to lease its Hambantota port to China for 99 years after failing to repay a loan. It doesn't stop there. In Latin America, Argentina and Ecuador have both asked to restructure their debt. Together, these cases reveal the bigger picture. A world now paying the price for China's lending boom. In total, developing countries will repay about $35 billion to China this year. More than $20 billion of that will come from the world's poorest nations. For many of these countries, it means cutting back on healthcare and education just to repay China. Beijing says these projects promote development. Critics say they create dependence and a trap. For Indonesia, whoosh is still moving, but it is now under a heavy load. And that is the real story of the Belt and Road Initiative today. If you go by Hollywood blockbusters, the world ends in only two ways. Either aliens show up or a giant comet wipes us out. Well, a new discovery has just shaken up that second theory. It's about a comet called 3I Atlas. It is the third interstellar object ever spotted by humans. It is currently hurtling through our solar system, and the internet, as always, is losing its mind. Some are convinced that it's on a collision course with the Earth. Others swear that it's an alien ship in disguise. Even Elon Musk has chimed in. He suggested it could wipe out an entire continent. So what's going on here? Is this comet a cosmic threat or just another space rock passing by? Our next report tells you.
The internet has found a new apocalypse. A blurry blob on a NASA feed. A comet by the name of 3I Atlas. Within hours, TikTok prophets were claiming Earth has 18 months left. Telegram groups confidently announced NASA was lying again. A rock from another star system had entered our solar neighborhood, only the third confirmed interstellar object ever seen. Scientists were excited. X was terrified. Reddit was taking bets, and TikTok was full of conspiracy theories. Why? Because you see, the moment someone says, mysterious object hurtling toward the sun, our brains perk up. Is it danger? Is it food? Is it aliens? Evolution wired us to obsess over the unknown. And comets, bless them, always deliver cinematic vibes. Dusty trails, glowing halos, long-distance danger. Decades ago, you heard about comets in newspapers. Today, anyone can declare that NASA is hiding something, and soon it turns into a conspiracy theory. And this time, there were a lot of them. Will this comet hit Earth? Is it full of aliens? Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb suggested there's a chance, very small but narratively delicious, that the object might not be entirely natural. Of course, Elon Musk chimed in.
It's quite a name. Sounds almost mystical, like Third Eye. Nickel-heavy comets and asteroids aren't uncommon. That doesn't make them spaceships. If I ever came across solid evidence of aliens, Joe, I promise I'll announce it on your show, Musk said with a grin. And just to be absolutely clear, I'm never committing suicide ever.
Strip away the hysteria, and this comet is genuinely fascinating. 3I Atlas is not from our solar system. It's the ultimate cosmic tourist. Scientists say 3I Atlas may be a relic from the early Milky Way, possibly 7 billion years old. That means predating our Sun and Earth by billions of years. If confirmed, it would be the oldest comet ever observed. The comet swings through once, never to return. It brightened faster than expected near the Sun, surprising astronomers, and it's wrapped in a ghostly halo of gas and dust. It gives empirical data from outside our system, letting scientists compare how different star systems might build comet-like objects. Its unexpected brightening and composition prompt fresh hypotheses, especially about how interstellar travel and prolonged exposure affect cometary bodies. So what is NASA saying? Will this comet actually hit the Earth, or does it carry aliens? Of course, the space agency has dismissed all such rumors. NASA says Comet 3I Atlas poses no threat to Earth and will remain far away. Its closest approach to our planet is about 1.8 astronomical units. That is roughly 270 million kilometers. In other words, it isn't dangerous. In internet terms, this is not the apocalypse you're looking for. Try again next comet season. Humanity has always looked up at the sky and seen two things: possibility and paranoia. Comet 3 I-Atlas has given us both, and a cameo from Elon Musk. If the world ends someday, it probably won't be because of a comet. More likely, it will be because someone mistweeted nuclear launch codes. Until then, enjoy the view. Comets like this don't visit often.
Our next story is special. Yesterday, at the stroke of midnight, India found new heroes. Not in politics, not in films, but on a cricket field. For the first time ever, India's women's team won the Cricket World Cup. After years of heartbreak, the team finally lifted the trophy. They beat South Africa by 52 runs and ended a 47-year-long wait. And they did it in front of a jubilant home crowd who cheered and cried as history was made. In a country where cricket is often considered a religion and the men have long held the limelight, the women have now claimed their own. Tonight we tell you how they conquered the world.
At the stroke of midnight, India found its newest champions. The sky above Navi Mumbai glowed with fireworks. And in the stands, thousands of fans rose as one, cheering, crying, waving the tricolour through the night. After 47 years of waiting, India finally won the Women's Cricket World Cup. They beat South Africa by 52 runs and lifted the trophy for the very first time. It was more than a victory. It was a moment of arrival. A night when the story of Indian cricket turned a new page. For a nation where men's cricket has long ruled the headlines, this felt like a long overdue correction. The women who had waited in the shadows now stood in the spotlight, calm, proud, and victorious. Just weeks ago, their campaign looked uncertain. 3 defeats in a row had left India on the brink. But they regrouped, fought back, and stunned the world. A record chase against Australia in the semi-final, and one flawless night in Navi Mumbai that changed everything. At the heart of it all was Shefali Verma. Just 21, she played as a replacement and was almost unstoppable. She smashed 87 runs with the bat, then took 2 wickets with the ball. Her off-spin changed the final, and her fearless smile lit up the night. Beside her stood Deepti Sharma, India's quiet warrior. She scored 58 runs and took 5 wickets, the performance that turned the match. With every over, the crowd grew louder. And when the final wicket fell, history was written in blue. India's women were world champions. But this victory was years in the making. There was a time when India's women cricketers travelled in unreserved coaches, carrying their own kits and earning a very nominal fees per match. They played for passion and not for pay. Mithali Raj, Jhulan Goswami, Anjum Chopra and Shanta Rangaswamy kept that dream alive when few were watching. The next generation turned that struggle into strength. In 2006, the women's game merged with the India's cricket board, bringing structure and support. In 2022 came the breakthrough, equal match fees for men and women. And the Women's Premier League gave Indian players a stage worthy of their skill. At this World Cup, the International Cricket Council raised the prize pool to a record $14 million, the highest in the tournament's history. India's share, more than $4 million, showed just how far the game had come. It was progress recognized at the highest level. Prime Minister Narendra Modi called the win historic. Former players, both men and women's teams, called it a defining moment. The Indian Cricket Board announced a reward of about $5.8 million for the players, coaches and support staff. It was recognition not just of a victory, but of a journey. Across the country, disbelief turned to pride. This win is not just about a trophy. It's about what it means: equality, respect and visibility. It's about every girl who dreams in blue. Captain Harmanpreet Kaur said it best, and I quote, "We wanted to break this barrier. This is not the end. It's just the beginning." And maybe that's what this midnight truly was, a story not of endings but of arrival. A story of India's women finally standing where they have worked so hard to belong.
And now it's time for Vantage shots, images that tell the story. Drones and fireworks light up the Giza sky as Egypt celebrates the opening of the Grand Museum. Hundreds march through Sao Paulo for the annual Zombie Walk, and Hong Kong's giant cartoon floats make their final voyage. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1957, the Soviet Union sent the first animal to space. It was a dog named Laika, who was sent aboard the Sputnik 2 spacecraft. Laika was astray on Moscow streets before she was chosen. She survived only for a few hours and then died from overheating and panic. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
We have zombies, monsters, demons, and characters. So what do? Dead should not be forgotten. They should always be remembered with respect, devotion, and affection. What we do here is a way to bring culture and entertainment to ourselves.